Hey everybody, thanks for joining me for another Make and Tell Tuesday. Today we're going to be doing a fun faux watercolor technique using Distress Oxide inks and some solid stamps. So to start off with, I have a panel of watercolor paper. This is Arch's 110 pound cold pressed paper. I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel, and I'm going to be doing my stamping with mainly 4 colors of ink. I have a couple shades of green and yellow for the lemons and then pink for the flowers. You can of course mix it up a little more than that if you want to incorporate more colors, but we'll be incorporating a whole lot more color actually when we get to the watercolor step. So first of all, we just want to stamp all these images. I'm going to cover my background with the stamped images using the Distress Oxide inks, and I'm not using a Misty or anything like that. I'm just using my blocks, and we'll just go ahead and stamp and fill up this background. Watercolor paper, a lot of times when you stamp you don't get a perfectly clear impression because of the texture in the paper, but that's okay. We're not going to worry about that at all with this technique, which is why I'm not using the Misty or anything like that. I'm just going to go ahead and stamp everything freehand with my blocks, and it'll all work out in the end. I'm using the smaller single flower from the set. This is picked raspberry ink, and also when I'm stamping this I'm going to stamp some and then not re-ink and stamp it again. It gives me a lot of variation in color, which will help to give us even a more realistic look when we get to the watercolor step. So I'm going to just continue on in this same way until my entire paper is filled. So you can see my entire panel is filled with stamped images, and now we're going to go ahead and add the watercolor look. So Distress Oxide inks react with water, of course, it's one of their features. So that makes them perfect for this technique. So I'm going to create actually a palette from using my Distress Oxide inks. I have a sheet of scrap of acetate paper here, and I'm just going to go ahead and sponge lots of different colors onto this acetate sheet. I have cracked pistachio, I have peeled paint, mustard seed. These are the same colors that I used for the stamping, and so we're going to sponge some of those on there. And then we're also going to sponge a lot of different colors that we didn't use in our stamping. I have worn lipstick, and I'm going to put some evergreen bough. I have crushed olive, which is a really great, very yellowy green, which is going to be fun for adding some neat blends into the leaves. I have aged mahogany. And then also some chipped sapphire. So you can see we have a lot of different colors here, and kind of probably wondering how that's all going to work out, but that's what actually is going to make the images really interesting. Alright, so we have some water, just plain clear water, and a brush. And to do this technique, all you really need to do is paint over your stamped images. Begin by painting over them with water, just clear water. So we're going to do kind of a wet on wet technique, and you can see here now why I was not concerned about the stamped images not being completely solid or well stamped, because once you start blending the water over the top, that problem takes care of itself. And so I'm just wetting that entire image, and then we're going to go over here and I'm going to grab some color off of our palette. What I have here, that's the Worn lipstick, and we're just going to drop that in and let that bleed into that other color. That's going to give us some fun shading on that lemon. And see how easy that was to create this look that just mimics actual real watercolor. And so we're going to continue on doing that same thing. So for the leaves, same thing. Just want to start off by wetting that entire area. Just paint over it with clear water. And then work in some other colors to get some really neat color fades and blends going on in those images. Makes it really interesting and really pretty. So there I dropped in some chipped sapphire. I can also drop in some of this, what is this, evergreen bough, I believe. It's more of a green, or more of a bluish green. Maybe some cracked pistachio. You can see how we have just a lot of interesting color going on in there. And when it's dry, it's going to look just like real watercolor. So we'll do the same thing here. This is one of the cracked pistachio leaves. This was stamped with the cracked pistachio ink. It's one of my favorite Distress Oxide ink colors. So we'll just wet that. And I love this color with the crushed olive. Dropping a little bit of that in there, that yellowy green along with this fun minty green is just so pretty. So there you can see how we're getting some really pretty color mixes in those images. And we'll do the same thing with the flowers as well. You don't want too much water, you want just enough so that paper is takes on kind of a glossy look. You don't want pools or puddles of water, but you just want to wet it enough so that it has that kind of glossy look, and then it's wet enough that you can drop other color in there. I'm dropping some aged mahogany in there, and that will just pull that color around and create those nice blends and fades and bleeds. And you can play around with dropping different colors in for a lot of different variation. I did aged mahogany on that first flower, but here I'm dropping in some mustard seed to blend in with that yellow. So I'm going to just continue on doing this same technique until all of my images are watercolored. All right, so we have finished adding the watercolor wet on wet technique over top of all of the stamped images. So I'm going to go ahead and let that dry, and then I'm going to add even more details with the detail stamps over the top. Alright, so our watercolored images are all dry, and I'm going to go ahead and add some stamp details now. For the leaves originally stamped in the peeled paint ink color, I'm going to stamp the vein details in forest moss. In the leaves that were stamped with cracked pistachio, I'm going to stamp the vein detail with evergreen bough, and I'm going to stamp the flower centers with aged mahogany. The detail layer for the lemon stamp is kind of a shaded area, and I don't think we need that, so we're going to just omit that, and we're just going to stamp the leaf details and the flower centers. And once again, I'm going to be just stamping without re-inking, sometimes just to add some variation. Right, and now the leaf details. Alright, our panel is finished, and look at that beautiful faux watercolor look we created using those solid image stamps. Really fun and really easy and super pretty. So I'm going to figure out a sentiment and some other details and turn this into a card. But thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this technique using Distress Oxide inks to create a beautiful faux watercolor look.